Ukraine shuts down Russia's banking industry in an instant. I know that many of us just love when Ukraine does something brilliant. And today we have another example of such brilliance. This is going to be a quick video because, well, I want to share this news with you right away. Ukraine shuts down Russia's banking industry in an instant. How did it happen? Well, through cyber warfare. Of course, they didn't use drones or missiles. They used something way more powerful than that. Their wits. This is absolutely brilliant. Let me read this to you. On February 24, 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, not only through land but also virtually. Shortly after Putin announced the special military operation, Ukrainians began sharing screenshots of a system called Signal. It was a system designed by the NSA to help Ukraine fight misinformation and propaganda. But soon people noticed something else. The screenshots were of Russian websites, and if you entered the Ukrainian domain at the end of the URL, you would be redirected to a Ukrainian version of the site. This raised suspicions, especially since the content of these sites had been changed. For example, one of the pages was about how to apply for a bank card. Instead, it said, "Stop the war. No to war." Another page that used to explain mortgages now had instructions on how to survive a Russian invasion. The fact that Russian banks were warning their customers about the dangers of the war and encouraging them to withdraw cash was particularly disturbing. By February 28, Russians had reported problems with accessing online banking and ATMs. And by March 3, most Russian banks went offline. Access to their websites was blocked, their apps no longer worked, and their ATMs didn't dispense cash. Many Russians woke up to find their bank accounts empty and all transactions declined. Some reported errors. Others reported their money was gone. Some even found evidence that their accounts had been emptied in the middle of the night. Russians started lining up outside a TMIS to withdraw cash, but there wasn't any. Branches of the banks were packed with customers trying to get their money out. So what happened to the banks? What caused the biggest financial crisis in Russia since 1998? The answer lies in the code. As it turned out, the system malfunction was the result of a massive cyber. On February 26, 2 days after the invasion, the anonymous group published a post on Twitter, claiming responsibility for the attack. They said that they had hacked into the Central Bank of Russia and were wiping bank data from servers. According to the group, they had infiltrated Russia's internet infrastructure and were gaining access to government agencies. By March 3, they had attacked 45 Russian banks. A few days later, the Ministry of Digital Development, Communications and Mass Media of the Russian Federation confirmed that 30 Russian banks and 2 government agencies were affected by the attack. However, it appears that the cyber attack on Russian banks was not the work of Anonymous alone. A few hours before the group published its post, a new Telegram channel appeared online called Cyber Avengers. It invited people to join the cyber war between Russia and Ukraine and shared links to the websites of Russian banks. At the same time, a Twitter account with the same name posted links to compromised banks and urged users to support Ukraine by attacking Russian banks and government agencies. Soon, hackers from all over the world joined the effort. Over the next few days, hundreds of Russian banks and government agencies came under attack. Today, the scope of the cyber offensive against Russia has expanded beyond the banking sector. Websites of state-owned companies, energy providers, airlines, pharmaceutical companies, and even universities have been compromised. And although the Russian authorities have restored access to most bank websites, ATMs still don't work in some places. The crisis in the banking sector continues. Many people are wondering why the cyber attack hit so hard. Why were Russian banks unprepared for it? And why has the attack been so successful? The thing is, the cyber attack exploited vulnerabilities that the banks were aware of. In January, for example, Visa and MasterCard sent alerts to banks about the threat of cyber attacks. They recommended that banks strengthen their security to prevent a large-scale cyber attack. Unfortunately, the banks either ignored the warnings or did not take the necessary measures. Otherwise, how could they have survived the first wave of attacks? But the biggest problem is that the banks were not insured against cyber risks. Banks buy insurance policies to protect themselves against natural disasters, fires, and other emergencies. But cyber risks were not included in the policies. According to Kommersant, a Russian business daily, cyber attacks were considered to be a low risk, so no one thought it was necessary to insure against them. Unfortunately for Russia, however, the country's banks failed to learn from the experience of the West, where cyber attacks have already caused billions of dollars in damages. In 2016, for example, The Bangladesh bank swiped almost $81 million from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York as part of a cyber heist. The hackers used malware to infiltrate the central bank's system and stole the money. In 2017, the British bank HSBC lost $830 million due to a cyber attack. And in 2018, the cybercriminals stole 2 billion yen from Japan's third-largest bank. All these attacks could have been prevented if the banks had insured themselves against cyber risks. But until recently, insuring against cyber attacks was considered optional. Now it's becoming mandatory. So how will Russia get out of this mess? The fact that the cyber attack on Russian banks was carried out by private individuals makes it difficult for the Russian authorities to respond. If the attack was carried out by a state, there would be clear culprits and it would be possible to negotiate a compensation. But in this case, there are thousands of hackers involved. Moreover, the attack was not limited to Russian banks. State agencies were also affected, which means that it's not just financial losses that are at stake. The Russian government's prestige has also suffered a major blow, and that cannot be compensated financially. Russia needs to develop a strategy for dealing with cyber attacks, but it won't be easy. The country's entire information infrastructure is built around security. Even Google services are blocked in Russia, and Russians have to use special versions of the websites instead. This means that Russian government agencies and banks are used to a high level of protection. However, the recent cyber attack shows that traditional security measures are no longer enough. The Russians need to learn to live with constant cyber threats. This is an absolutely brilliant move by Ukraine. And I say that because this is such a powerful weapon. You don't need tanks for that. You don't need missiles for that. You don't need anything. You just need to know how to work with computers. And of course, this is not the only example of such brilliant moves by Ukraine. We've covered many of them previously. And now let me go back to the video. One of the other things that I found very interesting is the fact that apparently the owner of this Telegram channel, this Cyber Avenger Telegram channel, now deleted this channel. Apparently it was getting a little bit too dangerous for them. But many people think that it was actually the SBU, the security service of Ukraine, that took this channel down. It may very well be possible. So, this is a truly remarkable story. And if you know someone who might be interested in it, please consider sharing this video with them. If you enjoyed this video, you might also enjoy another video that I've uploaded recently, with more details on similar cyber attacks against Russia. I will link it below. Thank you so much for watching the video. Give it a like and subscribe to my channels. I would love to have you back for my next one. And if you know someone who might be interested in this type of content, please consider sharing it with them. I would love to see you in my next one. Have a great rest of your day. Bye for now.